Hey everyone, Salty Stark here. Today we were talking about Guild Siege, and joined with us is BakersGoods. How are you doing today, Bakers?
I'm doing good. Just been working on getting a lot of units ready for the Guild Siege. That way I can hopefully do alright in it.
Sounds good. How do you actually feel about Guild Siege coming into the game? You excited?
Yeah, I think it'll add a lot of interesting aspects. It'll probably make it so some summoners feel better than they did before. Like, I think me for Kina, having immunity in it might be pretty valuable.
All right, well, let's actually get into what Guild Siege is then. As you guys can see here, Guild Siege is a game mode where three guilds are going to compete against each other. Your goal is to capture and occupy as many bases as you can during the battle period. So it's going to be a combination of offense and defense in a three-front war where both sides attack, or all three guilds are attacking each other at all times. Um, it will be a battle that lasts 1 week, divided into a preparation period, a first half battle, resting, second half battle, and a tallying period. You're going to have at least 10 guild members to apply to participate. Each camp consists of a summoner and 4 monsters. Defense camp's going to be the towers that you're going to be in. Select guild members can each prepare up to 10 defense camps. The guild master and veterans can place up to 5 defense camps per base. You can use an attack ticket to attack the defense camp of an adjacent opponent. The defense camps will disappear if you win. If there are no defense camps remaining, you can capture the base. The guild master and guild members can place extra defense camps in the captured base for a certain time. If all adjacent bases are occupied by the opposing guild, you'll be isolated and cannot earn siege points. Encirclement is a good way of capturing strong bases. Guild Siege Battle. Ranked points can be earned based on the difference in rank points before matching and the results of the siege battle. Ranking of guilds within the server are determined based on the rank points earned. A loot box of a higher grade can be earned as your rank increases. Fight in the Guild Siege Battle to earn bonus crystals based on your contribution. So, Bakers, based off that information, what do you feel people should be looking for when doing Guild
I
Siege
think
and
you
making
always,
siege comps?
yeah, I think you always want to be like trying to have some kind of team synergy. So, like, if you're going with a bruiser team, you probably want to make sure you have a healer and maybe a stripper so that you actually get damage off because they don't do a lot through like shields and stuff. If you're going with like a damage team, you'll want to make sure you have all the right buffs or just enough damage dealers in general just to kill your opponent before they get to healing. And then you might be going for a CC team as well, which is so you just want to make sure you have maybe some cooldown reduction, some strips, and a lot of hard CCs to control your opponent.
Sounds very good. And how do you think the meta will look for Kina? Right now, I'm looking at your current comps. As I can see, you have some bruiser comps. How do you think the meta will actually shape out as a Kina?
Yeah, so for Kina, I think you have like two main options, which is pretty much Bruiser or CC. And if you go Bruiser, you're gonna have to make sure that you have like either destroy or just insanely high damage on your Bruisers, because with Kina, you don't really get a lot of damage off at one time, so you want to make sure that you can make it through shields or slowly whittle down your opponent's HP. And then if you're running a CC comp, which is what I think Kina is probably best with, you'll want to run like a lot of cooldown reduction with it. So Galleon might actually be useful even after the nerf because giving 3 monsters their cooldown reduction will just greatly help you in battle.
All right.
And you probably run a lot less healers than a lot of the other classes just because your main summoner is a healer.
Yeah. Okay. What pitfalls do you think you're gonna have to look out for when attacking certain bases and stuff like that?
Um, you're definitely gonna have to watch out for things that will like just strip you and kill you from the start because most likely the enemies are gonna just try to go right past your front line and target your summoner down. So you'll want to make sure that you have some type of a single target healer on your team that will assist your Kina, because Kina alone will not actually just keep herself at full HP. So, like, for me, I would usually run with, like, a Kumar. A lot of people use Geno or something.
Okay. Very good. As for Orbia, I personally think the best comps to look out for would be high heavy healing comps when you're doing your defenses. So, as you can see personally on mine, I have, Annabelle, Juno, some sort of CC potentially. Then I think Galleon does actually still play a good role, although he has been nerfed. I think the recovery down is very helpful. As you can see, a lot of Orbias on my side, or at least for my guild, are still running Orbia. So, I mean, running Galleon. My apologies, but overall, I think the best thing is, just make sure you have an idea of frame of mind, make your comps, because you can't rerun units like you could in Sky Arena, for example. So, you know, here, for example, I have two solid healers, but they're not like necessarily main healer. They're just very good, like side healers, so they can complement each other. My second comp, I just have one main healer, and then um, Zhao Feng to give a little bit of recovery and stuff, and then immunity and cleanses. I think cleanses are going to be very important, and I think buffs are going to be much more important than they currently are. I think the 4 unit system for Orbia also allows you to actually run like damage dealers. This one's just a skill acceleration gas comp, which is okay, but I don't think it's going to be the current meta for Orbia. I think it's just, work with what you got to try to make comparable comps for people who are weaker than you to struggle with, because if people are equal then or stronger to you, I feel like they have the advantage because they're still going to be able to attack kind of how arena works. So you want to be able to diversify your comps more, and you're not just looking to take on just the top people the whole time. You're more or less looking to take on the weaker people of the guild and get so they're not just taking over a base for free. And if you are the weaker person in the guild, do make your defenses, because it's going to be very limited as it is. And even your weak defenses, take a placeholder and take units away from the upper people or equal people to you. So just remember that. Bakers, how do you feel Cleefs are going to build? Seeing as we don't have our honorary Cleef in the call today.
Yeah, so Cleese, I definitely think, like, I think they'll focus hard on skill acceleration and skill cooldowns and also mana regeneration, because Cleef, it's basically all about just supporting the summoner to where you can get the enemies like stripped, and then your Cleef will just deal all the damage to be able to get the opponent's monsters down one at a time.
For 5-star units, what do you think some common comps are gonna or common units are gonna be? Obviously, I'm assuming Ariel's still gonna be good. Bruisers like Teor, Rakan, stuff like that. Do you think there's gonna be any units with the four unit system that we're gonna see emerge though?
Yeah, I think we're definitely going to see a lot of like Fengyans and like AoE type of bruisers. And then anything that could be ran on destroy most likely will be. Uh, Good examples would be like I've been using Rakan lately, and he'll probably be used a good amount in there because he has like a 3 mana AoE provoke that'll help get rid of a lot of the assassin and archer types of comps. And then you will also probably see a lot of LD Nat 5s that will be far more powerful in Siege than they were in Arena, like Vermos, because adding one more unit for them to work with just makes their skills far more effective. You're definitely going to see more diversity in healers, because since people have to make 10 teams, they can no longer just use Ariel, Annabelle, and like Juno for every team. So I think it'll be interesting when it comes to healers, what people actually start using. Might start seeing some Chassoons and Wahis, Kumar, maybe a couple of single target healers, and a lot of like new AoE healers we don't regularly see.
All right, that sounds very good, very good. Now, everyone's been working on their 5 stars the whole time, so resources are a little strapped right now. Here are what we currently think are going to be common units that are going to be in the 4-star meta. Um, we'll start with damage dealers. Elia, just because she has the double defense break, she does the damage taken up, and she does have the unnotable stun. It's not going to be effective, but you never know what's going to change a fight. So it's very good for assassin comps for your 4-star towers because there are going to be 4-star towers, and people are going to have to build 4 and 3-star units. So hell yeah, Acelia is another good one. Acelia is going to be very good for Orbia because if you run it with fire stuff, you apply burn that replaces the defense up or places defense up with burn on one of her abilities, and if the target does have burn, they get a defense down for 20 seconds. Oh, it's a very good way of controlling buffs as well as placing more debuffs. She also does an attack down, and she removes attack up with, or basically, if they have an attack up, she'll remove it and then put the attack down. So she'll be, I think that's going to be a very notable unit as far as straight damage dealers go. I can see people running a lot of bulldozer offenses for this, just to try to single target nuke a single unit. Grego should be good, just because the pull, the overall damage that he does, makes him very desirable. Just the defense down the pull, and he does, if the target has a dot, he does do damage dealt up and gets just taken down. So he's a little bit more tanky than it. Baker's brought up Hina earlier. Hina's probably going to be a really good one, just because that's another unit that's very good at controlling the fight with her silence. I know when going through the storyline and that one part in Katana, that silence was getting really, really bothersome. It is a 5 mana cost though, so I don't think we're going to be seeing her as much as the other ones, but I think we will see her just because it's a unit that people know are uncomfortable and are comfortable with. Moving on, I think buffers, we're definitely going to see Megan, attack down, evasion down, attack up, attack speed up. It just gives you a lot. Just does a lot to help buff and debuff and give your team that advantage. Shannon's going to be another big one, just because everyone has their Shannon built. Holy Trinity, Shannon, Kona, Celia. Obviously, those units are going to be put into play because they are just really solid units as is, and they're very common units that have been built. So, another common buffer that we'll probably see is Remy, just because Remy gives a unnatural tankiness to your team with the crit rate down, the crit res up, and the crit damage taken down. So all of those combined really just make him a very solid buffer for your team, and I think it's going to be a very common unit to see. As far as healers go, we don't need to talk about the king of the 4 stars, Shushu, all that much. Everyone knows 4 stars. There's not really any immunity. Shushu's the only reliable immunity 4-star in the game. Lulu's going to be another big one. Shushu's brother. Below Lulu, just because they remove harmful effect. It acts very much how a aerial does, except on the first skill it has 4 mana, and on the second skill it just does not apply the recovery up. But so that'll be another big one. I think all of them are going to be good, and we'll discuss some of them more. But or for the pals, I think all of them have potential to be a good unit for Guild Siege. Moving on, Rakaja, the Wind Yeti, is going to be very good just because he is one of the strongest healers in the game. He heals based off of surviving group, so this is 16.2 times 5 units essentially if everyone's still alive, so on, so forth. So, and he applies unrecoverable and does damage based off his defense. So, very strong unit. Just because of the healing and debuffs. Another good one is going to be Colleen for the same reason. Unrecoverable is probably going to be a mainstay for 4-star Siege. She gives an attack up, unrecoverable, and applies attack down on her. if they have unrecoverable on their auto attacks. And then all 5 of the sisters are probably going to be very good. Of Rena, she removes harmful effects, does HP recovery, defense up shield. Iona, if you need to run more of a gas comp because she can revive with an invincibility, does continuous recovery on it, and another really good heal. It's an AOE heal for 3 mana. There's not too many 4 stars that have 3 mana heals, so he's really nice. And then Chloe, everyone, it's another unit everyone has built. Um, it's not, it's just a very solid invincibility. There's not too many good strippers into the 4-star category, so I think it'll definitely make a presence in the game. As far as other units you might see, as Baker was saying, we're going to have a lot of skill acceleration and mana control. So we're definitely going to see things like Kona, Tian, just due to the skill acceleration and the slight healing they do. 35% a lot. Both of them have it. Kona's heal is pretty decent, and he gets rid of electroshock and can potentially give you mana regen speed up if they do bring electroshock for whatever reason. And then Tian, another good reviver with continuous recovery. Other skill accelerators we can talk about would be like Mav and Donna. They just skill accelerate, removes dots, provokes, gives continuous recovery. Donna, same concept, just the skill acceleration, decreases harmful effect levels by 1, and decreases cooldown by 1 second per level decrease. So if someone stacks a bunch of harmful effects on you, he gives you great skill cooldown, and he has great skill cooldown acceleration naturally at 35%. So he also has a really good provoke as well. 2 mana cost. It is single target, but it is also irresistible. So next up, I'd like to talk about Rikuni and Dova as common units that you'll probably see, just due to skill cooldown down, skill acceleration. Also removes dots, heals a good amount on a single target, 55.2%, and will heal on auto attacks. Dova, kind of the same concept, does a skill to kill down, skill acceleration. Also gives an attack up, continuous recovery, and endure on your highest attack unit. So yeah, if the unit's below 30%, it applies attack up to allies with the highest attack. And additionally, applies continuous recovery and endure if the target's AP is below. So it's a single target to the summoner, so it's going to be especially good on Orbia, as well as on assassins, in my opinion. Like if you're trying to run an assassin comp like Hurricane or something like that. And then the last one I'd like to go over, that's going to be a very common unit you'll see, will be Pyrian. Pyrian does crit rate up, freezes, and does skill cooldown. So it just gives a good, really good buff to your more tanky units, to where your auto attacks will be doing just a little bit of extra damage, as well as the fact that it does give the summoner skill cooldown, or just decreases the summoner skill cooldown on a 3 mana by 30% and monster by 30%. And then if anyone knows what freeze does, freeze just really good as an ability. I believe that you don't actually get your mana back, or not mana. You don't get your skills. I'm pretty sure it pauses your skill cooldowns, if I'm correct, right, Bakers?
I think so, yeah.
Then some things that to mention as well. Provokers, you'll probably be seeing a lot of Water Frankenstein Tractor, just due to the fact that everyone had it built from Naraka days, and you'll be seeing a lot of Darien, just because Darien does a really good job with gas comps in terms of keeping your damage alive for a little bit longer. Anytime they get hit, he'll
And
pop this passive. Go ahead.
and he was a secret dungeon, so it's like most people probably have him built.
Yep, that is very true. And then, as far as strippers go, because like we said, there's not too many great strippers. We're definitely looking at the Water Vagabond if you're looking for something a little bit more tanky. It's a unit that you got in the main storyline just from doing Monster Story. Gives a defense up, removes beneficial effect, gives a defense down, provoke, does it all. Um, and then we also have the most common one that everyone can probably think of for a stripper that's a 4-star, Lauren. You're kind of probably wondering on a tankier build, but Lauren's going to be very solid just due to the fact that her basic attack, she increased his skill cooldown. She applies attack speed down, removes beneficial effects, applies an unrecoverable, and applies a defense down on auto attacks. Or right? No, she applies it on with the unrecoverable. No, I'm just crazy. She just applied defense down, so yeah, so it's just in her continuous passive. So, and then another one that we think might be a potential everyone's gonna do is the shear. Another removable, does damage based or does good damage. This one, the mana cost is a little bit higher on some of his stuff, but on the off chance he can also decrease monster skill cooldowns by 30%. So and the actual strip itself is triple hit, so he has 3 chances to strip at 75% for 3 mana. So he should be very good. And then if you're looking for more of a free to play approach, Winding Inugami is going to be a very good one. You get it at the very start of the game. It applies another defense down, removes beneficial, and it applies his attack up. So it's to itself, but it's still, every little bit helps whenever you're trying to run either tanks, damage dealers, anything in general can always use these kind of buffs just because the game feels a lot of the time comes down to a game of inches. So, but Bakers, what other units would you like to talk about that we might not see as much or no one's really like thinking about potentially being used?
Yeah, so for I'll just start by element. So for fire, you might see Rebecca, the fire witch. She's like a good healer, but she'll also replace like defense down with defense up, and then on the enemies she will make their attack ups become attack downs. So she's a healer that just overall makes your team's survivability a lot higher because she'll be making it so you take less damage and the enemy deals less damage. I think the Fire Garuda will be actually pretty good because there's not a lot of cleansers when it comes to natural 3 and 4 stars, and he will cleanse one harmful effect AoE, but he also has Oblivion, which no other nat 3 or 4 I think has that, and there's quite a few passes that you might want to deal with. Mostly like the summoner's passives, like you could use that Oblivion, and if you happen to have the ability to nuke the summoner, you should be able to without their endure or ignore deaths going off. There's also the Fire Inferno. He's like an AoE defense break and an AoE stun monster. So he'll probably be like, he could be good damage, but also if you have him on Despair, he just has 2 skills that could do a lot of CC while also having decent damage, but he'll probably be pretty squishy, so he's more of an off chance you might use it, because he'll probably die most of the time if you don't protect him well.
More situational. I'd like to go into on the subject of fire units. I think the fire mummy would be really good, Sonara, just because I know as an RVA player on doing TOA 170 normal, if I don't have healers in, it's very likely, or shielders, it's very likely that I actually just destroy myself on the fire mummy stage. So the reflect damage does wonders. As long as you have more HP, keep doing more damage. And it can definitely set some people off in terms of not expecting it. So, and once you get a comp, then you get a comp down. Another one I'd like to talk about is the only 4-star bomber in the game. Fun fact: we only have one 4-star bomber in the game currently. Pyro. I think Pyro could be potentially a very good one, just because you're not running into as much immunity, and the big problem with running bombers is if the people see a bomber regularly, they run immunity. So, but if you don't have that, and there's nothing really, the only 4-star unit that cleanses bombs in the game is the Fire Garuda Cahill. So I think he'll be very good. But those are the two unique units I think are going to be picked. How do you think about water?
For water, I think the Water Serpent has always interested me. I actually built it far before Guild Siege ever came out because it has increased cooldown and I think double AoEs. So I think he could just be like a fun despair unit to try out that's also a bruiser. He'll help you with like getting rid of enemies that use their skills just too often. Or even like something on a long cooldown, you could make it even longer of a cooldown. Like say you're against a Chloe, you could make that invincibility take a little bit longer to get around to you. The Water Mummy would be kind of a CC monster because he has a passive where every time he uses a skill, he'll have the ability to freeze. He doesn't really do a lot else with his skills. I think he might do Frostbite or something. Yeah, so he just has damage based on health and Frostbite. So really with him, you're just aiming for pure CC. And then the Water Mammoth is another monster I actually had built prior because kind of reminds me of Taylor. He has damage based on defense, and he will defense buff his own team. And he will provoke while doing damage. So he's like overall good if you're trying to run a defense heavy comp. He'll be your healer for the team, your buffer, and he'll also add an extra provoke. And then if your enemies are happening to use destroy runes, since he's a knight, usually most monsters will already be attacking him from the start of the game because I think only assassins don't really target the front line to start. So destroy runes on him will give your team a constant shield, which could be pretty nice. What about you?
I think that there's actually one unit that I would actually like to bring up here. The Water Penguin Knight, I think it's going to be heavily slept on. He just, when you're trying to if you're trying to run a comp that's very control heavy, he has a 4% chance on freeze on auto attacks. He has a 70% chance to freeze and apply defense down. And if the target is frozen, he is guaranteed to hit a critical hit on his third skill. So, and if they are frozen, he also does a bonus damage on his third skill. So I think he can be a very good bruiser in general, and I think he can have a lot of potential to control a whole fight. Moving on, how do you feel about wind monsters?
Uh, there's actually a few interesting wind monsters. They're probably going to be lesser used, but I figure I mention them anyway. Like, there is the Wind Salamander, who has an AoE silence, and I think it's only like a 3 mana skill. And I think he'll be interesting because there's not a lot of silence that you could use when it comes to natural 3 and 4 stars, and silence is a pretty long CC type of debuff. So we'll see if he has any real use. It's a really small AoE, so probably won't hit a lot. Then there's the Wind Mystic Witch. I think she'll probably actually be used quite a bit just because the story actually made you get her up to like level 60. She'll give your she will brand the enemies, like give them damage taken up, as well as heal block. And then she will also change defense buffs into defense breaks. So she'll overall help you with like taking down those annoying teams. Like, say an enemy has a Water Apicion, she'll be able to like change all the defense buffs into defense breaks, and then also give a heal block to help you with actually getting through all of the recovery. And an interesting one that's more of a bruiser would be the Wind Werewolf. He has a passive that increases his damage based on his max HP. And he has a triple hit attack, so I think he could actually do quite a bit of damage with it on his first skill. It's a 3 mana hit, and it would be adding on about looks like 48% of his max HP is damage. As long as he's a higher HP than the enemy, which shouldn't be too hard to do since he is a warrior and warriors naturally have high HP. He also does recovery receive down on his basic attack with a 6% or 7% chance. 6% looks like. So he'll be an interesting one. He doesn't have a lot of use other than damage, but as a bruiser, that's usually gonna be fine. The Windharg, might have you touch on this more than me because I forget what he does sometimes. I know he cleanses shock or something, but yeah, I'll let you go into his skills.
So if we're looking at Rafidi, the Windharg, he does removes electric shock. If he does remove the electric shock, he will give immunity to the team for 14 seconds. So I believe this might be better in more or less an attacker position than on a defense. But he'll also apply continuous recovery, and he does do a accuracy down, unrecoverable, and root on his second skill at a 4 mana cost. Which roots can be very good if it hits on the summoner. So is accuracy down, unrecoverable, since there are not any really AoE cleanse or multi cleansers other than Chloe. So he should be a pretty solid unit for at least thinking about using as an offense in Siege. And then, is there any more you wanted to cover?
Yeah, I guess there's also the Wind of Picyon. Kind of covered it a little bit, but I think people are gonna really use that one quite a bit, just because of the extra heal and revive. I think when it comes to 4-star battles, you might see revives make a lot more of a comeback, just because 4 stars don't naturally do that much damage compared to Nat 5s. And then, of course, the counter to that would be Fuko, the Wind Lich, but he will have anti-revive, I think, as his passive. So, since there's going to be quite a few more Nat 4 revivers that are more viable than Nat 5 revivers, he'll come into play quite a bit, because you're definitely going to end up running into teams where you kill like 2 things and they just keep reviving over and over. Sure, they're going to be low HP, but Nat 4s are for some reason better at reviving than Nat 5s generally. He also has a defense break and a shield, so he has some self-survivability and can do pretty good damage if he gets his defense breaks in.
Very true. I like to go into the light units now. I think that potentially a good damage dealer is going to be Taru. As we saw, there is a good amount of defense-based units in the game, especially in the 4-star category. So basically what Taru does is he has a stun on his skill 2, and then he has a 3-hit 50% defense pen attack. So he's just a very solid damage dealer in anything that, you know, some might have defense based comps. So he can definitely go through like the water mammoth or something like that pretty easily. So I think there's some potential behind him. The next one I'd like to look at is Lauren. We did bring up Lauren already a bit, but it's just this thing with the remove beneficial effects, unrecoverable, and the school cooldown up. It's going to make her very viable, in my opinion. Is there any light units you would like to talk about that you've been exploring?
Yeah, so I actually had built the Light Serpent in the early game before I had ever pulled a Stripper, and it actually has like a pretty decent AoE strip as well as an AoE stun. And when it's attacked, it'll actually defense buff itself as well. So it does damage based on its defense, and it'll buff itself. So overall, it's more of a control type unit. You could like CC your opponent after stripping them. Then there's also another unit I built fairly early game, was the Light Elemental. He's like slightly weaker of a unit, but he's interesting because he's an assassin, which means if you're targeting like an Orbia or someone who has like really strong archer or mage out on the field, he will actually go for them while also having survivability from his passive because he'll make any elemental damage be decreased by, I want to say 35%.
35%.
Yeah, 35. So if you see your opponent is like all not light and dark monsters, you could bring him in and he'll actually survive pretty well. You have him well ruined. And he'll actually target like mages and archers that you want to get down first. But as far as like debuffs go, he really only has a bleed, so don't expect much from him there. And Bella Dion is also probably going to be another very used healer. She might not be as common though, just because you do have to get an LD 4-star for her. She has a full strip on her first skill that will decrease its cooldown if it successfully removes the beneficial effect. And then on her second skill, she will heal and give your team attack speed up. So overall, she's just a useful healer that will get rid of the enemy's debuffs, or their buffs. And then the last one I would probably touch on is the Light Lich Chaffis. He's an interesting one because he could be both damage or tanky. Because he gives himself invincibility for one, so he could survive pretty long. So if you were to build him like Despair and for damage, you could just build him full damage and he has that invincibility to keep him safe if your opponent doesn't have strips. And he will be doing unrecoverable while doing a lot of damage at the same time. Or if you choose the route of building him tanky, like say your opponent has assassins that you know will target a mage, you could go in with him built for like, I don't know, 70, 80k HP, and every time those assassins attack him while he has invincibility, he will be decreasing their HP by 7%, and also giving them unrecoverable. And then he'll also heal himself at the same time while he's being attacked like that. So he's more of an interesting one that you could build in like a few different ways. I would probably go Destroy on him, no matter what way you build him. Just because Despair works really well with his AoE. And Destroy because the way that his passive works, it's like it's going to take a while to kill your opponent, so you might as well chip away at their HP in the meanwhile. But yeah, that's about it for light.
All right. Well,
For me.
I would like to go into some dark units. I think that Soren's probably going to make a resurgence. I know whenever Battlefield originally came out, people would like to run Soren just because she has a really strong second skill. It stuns at a 30% chance, hits twice on a single target, and it can be, and it does, on the 2 hits in total, about 1200 or 1250 damage, 1250% damage. Therefore, there's some potential on her actually being able to one shot some summoners. So another thing is if she lands the or the first skill, her second skill, or skill 3, depending on how you look at it, will do 50% damage dealt up, and it's a 2 mana cost ability. So you can just spam that. She's probably one of the strongest PvP damage dealers in the 3 to 4-star category, just based off of those 2 traits. The next one I'd like to look at, I know if you've done Spires, you felt it, I felt it. Um, Zinc. Zinc does a really good job of, just taking off block beneficial effects. He does damage based off of his defense, and he applies attack down level 1 on his skill 3, and then on his skill 2 he does crit rate down, and he's just a really nice, tanky damage dealer that can also strip, I believe. He just blocks the beneficials, but he's just a nice still damage dealer that can, if not put in check, can run away with the game, in my opinion. Another one, Mantura. I think there is some potential of running lead comps around this unit to just, mess with people on the damage that he does, as well as his stun. So he just does good amount of he does a surprisingly good amount of damage if they have bleed. On top of that, I think bleed is kind of underlooked right now. It can do just because it can do all the way up to 5% damage, and it decreases HP recovery. So stacked with a decrease in HP recovery naturally just means that they can. Oh, I'm actually looking at the wrong one. My apologies. I'm at the serpent. Mantura. He applies poison down, and he is actually one of the few 3-stars that have a fear. So fear, in my opinion, is actually really strong because basically what it does is if it hits the summoner, you cannot use any of your unit's abilities or anything like that, and everything just kind of goes to a halt at that given point in time. So it just does a really good job of controlling the game if you can get above a level 3 poison. So I believe that you can probably run it in a poison comp. And yeah, I think that has some potential. Next one would be the Dark Vagabond Jubel. Jubel's just a really strong unit in general, in my opinion, because there is going to be so much unit skill acceleration in the game, and he suppresses skill cool-ups and skill cooldowns, so it's going to negate a lot of that stuff. So I think he'll be really good on offensive units against like Kona, Tian, Pyrian, and stuff like that. And then the last one I would like to cover personally is Siren, just because Siren applies unrecoverable. Is an assassin that applies unrecoverable, so if you're versing like an Orbia or something like that, it will go after that, apply unrecoverable, and then if it hits unrecoverable, it'll apply defense down, or it'll apply the defense down no matter what, but it will also recover HP based on it, so it can self-sustain a little bit to help out with that. Is there any you would like to go over?
There's quite a few interesting dark monsters. I would say like starting with the Nat 3s. There's not too many. I would just say like the Dark Golem kind of interests me just because he has a 2-mana provoke, and then he has a bleed that scales on defense. But his passive is reflect damage, and I think with Nat 4 specifically, if you get a full reflect damage team going, you could actually probably do alright. Then onto the Nat 4s. The Dark Griffin, we might see some because everyone got quite a few copies of him during the Amir event. Because when we're turning in our pies, we got some of him with Amir. And he will speed buff himself with his basic attack, and then he'll give himself like vampire and damage taken down with his second skill. So, and then he'll also crit rate up himself with his first skill. So he's kind of just a bruiser that will like self heal himself. And he's more of like he'll just build him high speed and like semi tanky, and he'll just continually deal damage while also absorbing quite a bit of damage thanks to his vampire and damage taken down. I would say he's more of a destroy type of monster. You would just build him high speed and hope that he destroys a lot of HP for your team to do something with. Then the Dark Mammoth Basalt, I've always liked defense buffers, and he defense buffs while healing. And he's also somewhat hard to kill because if you do too much of his HP as damage, he'll actually reduce the damage by 60%. And then he also will have a provoke on his second skill that is AoE based on his defense, and he also buffs himself, so he could do alright damage for being a healer. Then there is also Mara, the Dark Amazon. As I mentioned earlier, there will probably be a lot of revivers in Nat 3 and 4s. So having Mara, who will anti-revive on every skill, will be pretty valuable, as well as heal blocking. And heal blocking is a little more effective with Nat 3s and 4s because there's not as many cleanses and immunity, so generally you'll be able to actually get them to stop healing. Then Jolton, the Dark Werewolf, he's a really tanky bruiser that will do a lot of bleed to the enemy. He does bleed on both of his main attacks, and he'll do HP based damage, so you can build him like 100k HP and just let him sit there dealing damage throughout the whole fight. But also, if the enemy happens to be attacking Jolton, he'll return with a 25% rate when critically hit. He will return 3.5% of his max HP as damage. So, like, say you have 100k HP and like some squishy assassin attacks him, like 10 attacks from that assassin could potentially like take them out. So it'll be interesting. And he'll also increase his damage based on bleed, which both of his skills bleed, so he should almost always get that damage bonus. There's also the Dark Inferno. I've seen him actually used in Arena once or twice just because upon his death, he'll deal 80% of his max HP as fixed damage. And if you build him tanky enough, that'll actually kill like quite a few units. And I don't even know what his skills actually do, but that part alone is just enough to make him actually viable. So he has a AoE defense break as well that can also deal poison damage, and he'll also have a stun on his second skill. But realistically with him, you're just hoping that when he dies, he takes an enemy out with him, because usually the enemy he's taking out is going to be a damage dealer, which is what will commonly cause your team to lose. And seeing as he's a mage, a lot of assassin teams will target him. Then I would also say Cassie, just for ignoring beneficial effects. She has like attack speed up for herself and just damage mitigation for ignoring beneficial effects. We will ignore that. And the last one I would say is Cha Cha. Cha Cha is like, she's kind of a fun monster. Any debuffs that the enemy applies to you, you could throw back to them. So it's kind of like a cleanse, but also will harm the enemy. So if you're in like, you wouldn't want to take her into too debuff heavy of a match because it's a 4 mana cost, but like, say the enemy just has a defense break and maybe a heal block or something, you could just transfer all those back to them and it'll make you be able to turn a fight around on a dime. She also will have a heal based on her attack, which will just add to the survivability of your team because you always will want different forms of healing to help you out. And on her basic attack, she applies res down, which honestly probably won't affect a fight. But yeah, that's about all I got for Dark.
Yeah, no, I think that's all I pretty much got for Guild Siege. I think we covered it very well, and I'd like to thank you for coming out and talking to everyone today. Is there anyone you'd like to, anyone or anything you would like to shout out at this time?
Yeah, I'll just shout out my little brother's stream. He streams on Twitch. His name on there is Thevelin. It's got just one E. It's supposed to be the Evelyn, but yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, you heard it here, guys. Check out twitch.tv, the Evelyn, TheBelynn. And thank you guys for watching. If you enjoy the content, let me know in the comment section below. And if you want to see more, please subscribe. And as always, like the video. Thank you guys for your time and have a good one.